away from you. But please never fear. I'm with you. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Feedback. Not good. Feedback. Not good. You're going to see me turn away from you throughout the course of the program because I'm looking at you and I have another computer here and I have another computer here. Never fear.
Okay.
I'm with you. I'm listening. Please don't let that bother you. There we are. Share. Copy. There has to be an easier way to do this. I don't know what that is, by the way, but there has to be an easier way to do this. I just haven't got it. I haven't found it yet. Even though I have searched Facebook, I have yet to find an easier way to do this. I have to do it all one by one. So for those of you who are in our group, our home group page, who might be watching, because I'm not looking at it at the moment, this is our very fun pre-production sharing of the program. It is tedious and pedantic at best. It is what Facebook demands of us, using the tools of the right against themselves. Facebook at its finest. Sharing the program one by one by one by one by one. I'm actually attempting to share to some additional national outlets today, including a union page and Real Progress in Action. We'll see if they actually allow it onto their page. That will be very interesting to see. So I apologize, Facebook. Just hang in there with us. You know how this goes each week. We have to do a little bit of bookkeeping here. As we go, you'll see our guest is in there with us at the moment. Just hang in there with us, gang. This is the pre-production part of the program. As we do our fun sharing, you know how that goes. It's nothing too exciting about it, but this is, just part of the deal. So just hang in there with us. We're getting to it. Have a new Our Revolution group with us this week. Our Revolution West Philadelphia suburbs. Very happy to have them on board. Also, the Jefferson Hills Democratic Committee there, Brandon, this week. Thrilled to have them on board as well. that somewhere I shouldn't have put it. Whoops. Lower Saucon Township will not be happy with me about that. That was a whoops. I believe the government page of my home township is not going to be happy about that. That's a big whoops. That is a fat thumb putting the program somewhere it was not supposed to go. That's a big whoops. That's a big whoops. That is a big whoops. My government homepage is not going to be happy about that. I can guarantee you. The government Facebook page of my home township is not going to be happy. Just put the program somewhere it was not supposed to be. They are not going to. And it also might be that they just might simply flag the post and not put it where it belongs. Oh, actually, let me do this too. I will forward the phone to the show phone number, even though we rarely get a call. But of course, if I don't forward it, this will be the time that we get 900 phone calls, 267-227-9189. You'd think I'd have that memorized by now, but I do not. So the call forwarding is on. All right, kids, here we go. Welcome, 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 one and all. Welcome home. Welcome back from my humble second bedroom in the Saucon Valley, part of the Lehigh Valley, part of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in these United States, on planet Earth, the only one we have. Third rock from the sun, part of the Terran solar system in the Milky Way galaxy, part of this universe of ours. This is the Kennedy Effect for 6 December 2020. Welcome back and welcome home, one and all. We have just barely shaken off our Thanksgiving food comas to return to you with a live program from my humble second bedroom. The Kennedy Effect returns to you for the 6th of December as we transition out of fall and what feels like transitioning into winter. It is a chilly, chilly day and a chilly, chilly weekend here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley. We are thrilled to have each and every single one of you back with us for yet another live program. You know the tagline of the program. If you follow us at all on social media, it is time to inform, educate, and engage. If you are watching, wherever you may be watching us across the now 70 some odd, between 60 and 70 some odd places on Facebook that we share the program to, thank you. Each and every single individual that consumes this program through any of the, if you count each and every single Facebook page and group and so on that we send the program to, including the other, if you include all the ways that we send the program out, there's now about 80 different ways that you can consume the program. To be honest, we don't care how you do it. We're just thrilled that you do so. Each and every single one of you, wherever you fall on the political spectrum, young, old, male, female, person of color, pink, polka dots, antennas, tails, hair, don't care. We just are happy that you are here, and we appreciate every single one of you. You are listening live, watching live on any of the 70, roughly now, between 60 and 70 places across the Facebook universe that we share the program. If you're watching and listening, you can stay exactly where you are and continue to enjoy the program. We hope you learn. We hope you enjoy. We hope you will engage with us. Call us later in the program. Call us later in the program and engage with us, ask questions, yell at me, scream at me, disagree, agree, send in a comment, whatever you want to do. When we open up the phone line later in the program, engage with the program. That said, if you want to join the live the live conversation that's going on, and for whatever reason I can't see any of it. Hopefully, I don't know if you can help me with that. I can't see any of the folks that are in the chat at the moment. You come to our home Facebook page. It's titled That Other Side of Information. Is our home group Facebook page for all things the Kennedy effect. I will see you. We can say hello. You can enter a comment, a question for our guest, for me, and we can you can interact with the program that way. That is how we will see you. That is how the most direct way to interact with the program. But if you are on any of the 60 to 70 plus places across the Facebook universe that we share the program, you are more than welcome to stay exactly where you are with hot101.net. The Our Revolution Pennsylvania, Our Revolution National. We've shared to some new places this week. The Jefferson Hills Democratic Committee. There was a mainline rants and raves. There's an Our Revolution group in West Philadelphia that we have shared to. So there's some new groups. If you want to stay right there and watch, please feel free to do so. But it is our home group page titled That Other Side of Information. That is the home base for all things the Kennedy effect. You can join us there and watch there. We'll see your names. I'm not seeing comments for some reason. There's a thing, something's going on that I can't see anything. There, maybe, there, no, I don't know why I can't see comments for some reason. I can't see comments or names. I can't see anything at the moment. We'll try to sort that as we continue to go. I usually see your names. I will say hello to you. I can see your comments and questions. But you join us over at That Other Side of Information. You can interact with us that way. Hey, friends, family, sisters, brothers of hot101.net, thank you for welcoming us back into your lives on yet another Sunday evening. On your smart speakers, in your cars, on any devices, any way that you consume hot101.net. Thank you again for welcoming us back into your lives on yet again on this sort of holiday season Sunday evening. If you do not know how to consume hot101.net, well, it is super, super simple. The hot101.net home Facebook page is actually, of course, one of the places that we always send the program. You can go to the main website page at hot101.net, which was recently redesigned a couple months ago. Is still pretty recent. It looks fantastic, very, very easy to use. As soon as you open it up, you will begin to listen automatically. You don't even have to click on anything. Also, there is the apps, 3 apps that you can listen to get the hot101.net. If you have an Apple device, go to the Apple App Store and you can search for hot101.net, get the app for that. If you have an Android device, go to the Google Play Store and look for hot101.net. You can get an app for your Android device. If you already have the TuneIn radio app, just search for hot101.net and you can listen to us there. The Twitter page is open. We are on the Twitters. I have it open right in front of me. You can live tweet us at That Kennedy Talk. Of course, it's all smooshed together. You know how those fancy Twitter handles work. That Kennedy Talk, at That Kennedy Talk. You can speak to us, tweet us, send us a message. Again, send a question, agree, argue, disagree, send an opinion, tell me I'm full of it. I'm not, but you know how that works. Argue, agree, disagree, contribute to the conversation, interact with us. This program is not a lecture. If you wanted to be lectured to, you could go back to college or listen to NPR. We love NPR, but if you want to be lectured to, go there. This is an interactive program. We want you to take part in the program. We want you to ask questions. This is your program. Inform, educate, and engage. Engage with us. Be part of the program. You can email us at thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. That is the email address for all things the Kennedy Effect. Again, it is yet another way for you to contact us. Questions, comments, yell, agree, disagree, stomp your feet, send show suggestions, guest suggestions, but also that is the way to get a hold of us if you have a product, a service, a company, a business, or anything that you wish to promote on literally a global scale. This program reaches all over the planet. And if you want to promote it, the Kennedy Effect is exactly the place to do so. Contact us via email, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. Can't catch the program live? Don't panic. Anywhere that it's been sent on Facebook and shared, if you're familiar with how Facebook works, you know that it will say there in a recorded version. You can always go back and watch us later, but you can also go back and check us out on our YouTube channel. That Other Side of Information. Just search That Other Side of Information and you can watch the program back in a recorded version. Take it in bits, watch the whole thing straight through, listen to it while you're getting dinner ready, getting the kids ready for school in the morning, whatever it is that you're doing. You can check us out at the YouTube channel. You can also go to Instagram, also That Other Side of Information, and find the program that way. There are no shortage of ways that you can take in the Kennedy Effect and learn and listen and really gain knowledge. We hope, that's why we're here, gain knowledge from the programs that we bring you each and every week. And this week is no different. After my long rambling introduction of information, let me get to our honored guest. I'm very, very thrilled that he is here doing us a favor. Look, all guests do us a favor. They contribute their time to us very graciously, and the gentleman that is our guest tonight is no different. Our guest this evening, let's get straight to him, is Professor Dr. Charles Kelly. Among the things that we'll probably be discussing tonight, if you're familiar with the program and a regular listener, you know that we tend to ramble all over the place. The professor, I'm sure, will say something tonight that I will seize upon and we will go down a rabbit hole, but we'll let the professor start the way that he wishes to. Professor Charles Kelly has written several books. Among the topics that he's written on are how autocrats come to power. He's written about the death of capitalism. He has written and taught about Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal. But let's let Professor Kelly tell you about himself. Professor Kelly, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you very much, and it's my pleasure. And I'm grateful for you inviting me to talk. In terms of my background, I'd like to start off where I am right now, because I'm interested in your statement about the Kennedy Effect and the other side of information, and how you conclude your introduction by saying that it is time to educate, inform, and engage. And that's where I've been for the last 15 years. And by the way, George Bernard Shaw said much the same thing a long time ago, many years ago. He said that civilization is a race between education and catastrophe. And the reason so many civilizations and nations, corporations, labor unions, organized religions get into trouble is because they don't educate themselves about the importance of making sure you get good leaders to lead your organization. If people don't understand how to distinguish between somebody who's only interested in his own welfare as opposed to the interests of the nation and even the corporation that he's working for or the organization he's working for, they either elect or they promote the wrong people to lead their organization. And that always ends up in a disaster. And I think the classic example of that is what happened in the election of 2016, when an uneducated public that was uneducated about the dangers of demagogues and the techniques of demagogues voted for the wrong person because they thought he represented their interests, and he doesn't. And the public needs to understand that good leaders have to have the right values. And my education in terms of actually learning how to value what's going on in nations and organizations began when I got my PhD from Purdue in 1962. That's when my education began, after I got the degree. And the degree was in organizational communication. And I learned how to go enter an organization, talk to individuals and groups of individuals, and find out why people were getting promoted and why other people weren't getting promoted. And I worked with individual groups who were having conflicts between them, like production and manufacturing. And I did conflict resolutions for different groups of people who were having problems, because just being a good communicator isn't enough. You can be an excellent written and oral communicator, but if you don't have the right values, you do the wrong things. And people have to understand how to tell the difference between what I call a destructive achiever and a person who actually has the interests of the organization and even the nation at heart. And one of the things that I think is important is that people promote individuals that promise you short-term results, quick results, and painless results. And in the national sense, you pick people who promise you quick and painless results. And Trump is a classic example of that. He says, hey, vote for me, I've been successful. I ran successful businesses, but he lies about everything he's doing. And if people don't understand that that's a technique of demagogues, and you're getting a wrong picture of a person's success, they're judging people by image rather than their actual performance.
Well, Professor, let me just stop you there and let me back up just a tiny bit. First off, let me please ask you, if I could, if you could share a bit about yourself with our listeners and viewers. Who is Professor Kelly? Who are you? How did you get here?
Okay.
And after we get past that, if I could please ask you to get into Mr. Trump was elected, quote unquote, elected. I'll put that in air quotes as a bit of a misnomer of a word, because words matter. It might be semantics, but words matter. How did Mr. Trump get elected? We know he got elected through the Electoral College, but lost the I don't want to say the popular vote. He lost the main national vote by over 3 million votes. Right. How is Mr. Trump different than George W. Bush, who also lost the national vote?
Okay.
So let me start off with asking you again, who is Professor Kelly, and how did you get here?
All right, let's say I started my adult life when I graduated from high school in 1950. And I joined the United States Navy because I was my mother's major support at the time. And there's no way I would ever have gone to college if I had to support my mother and pay for a college also. So I joined the United States Navy, and I spent 4 years, 1 month, and 9 days in the Navy. And that allowed me to go to college basically free.
On the GI Bill,
yes? Through the GI Bill. So my message there is, it was government largesse, basically. Of course, I had to serve in the Navy for that amount of time. It allowed me to become educated enough to make a decent income and pay taxes and support our government. And then fast forward very quickly to getting a PhD from Purdue in organizational communication. And this was at a time when corporations were having a lot of trouble with breakdowns between levels of an organization. When you put people in a structured situation, we have different levels of power up and down, and you have different functions back and forth. You get conflicts of interest. In a typical manufacturing plant, you may have a conflict between production and technical. Or in the broader sense, you may have the marketing department having conflicts with the production department. And one of the problems that you run into is that people learn over time that their image becomes more important than their actual performance. And I criticized, part of my first book, The Destructive Achiever, I criticized my own profession. Here we go around teaching people how to be excellent communicators, how to be persuasive, and we do a good job with that. But we don't teach people how to defend themselves against people who are good communicators but have lousy values. And if you don't educate people about the dangers of a very fluent, persuasive person, you promote that person in a corporation or in an organization. The Catholic Church is an classic example of that when the pedophile priests started surfacing. I'm pretty sure that very principled bishops tried to do the right thing when they put the priest in counseling and then put him into a different parish where he continued his abuses. And so people go for this quick, short-term solution to predict the organization, but it has disastrous long-term effects. And so what Purdue taught me was how to go into a corporation and learn what's actually going on. And what I found is that if you talk to the subordinates of a manager, and then you talk to his peers of that manager, and you talk to his bosses, you get different pictures of how that guy is performing. And they're quite different often. And what I learned is that it's so easy for somebody in a very large, growing, complex organization to lose touch with what's going on in the bottom levels of his own organization. In a typical corporation, for example, you've got the chief executive officer of the corporation. Then you've got presidents of the companies in that corporation. And then they have plant managers or organization managers. And then they have department heads. And then they've got superintendents and you've got group leaders. And what happens so often is that the people who most know what's going on don't get their information to the people at the top. And one of the frequent criticisms that I heard over and over again is criticisms of, say, workers in an assembly plant. And they talk about the fact that the managers above them don't know the difference between the good foreman and a bad foreman. Because the good foremen will tell management that they can't get something done in a certain amount of time, or it's going to be costly, or they'll have to sacrifice some short-term gain. But then a destructive achiever won't do that. A destructive achiever say, yeah, I can get you more production quickly. And he does, but he's cutting corners. He stops doing preventive maintenance, for example, and he focuses all his attention on output. And this happens in organization after organization. It happens in labor unions. It happens in organized religions, as I said. It happens in every human group. And when I entered corporations and I found out how different people viewed other people doing different jobs, I decided to write the book, The Destructive Achiever. And basically, I've been focusing on writing things about how things go wrong because we promote the wrong people and we elect the wrong people. Now, the reason so many people voted for Trump, they knew he was a demagogue. Most people knew that he lied. Most people knew that he shaded the truth and that he took advantage of his suppliers and the people he owed money to. And he had to sue them to get what he wanted. He did all kinds of bad things. But they thought, he's my demagogue. He represents me. I'm against abortion. He says he's going to make it illegal. So I'm going to vote for him, even though I know that he's a bad person. Or I'm going to vote for Trump because he's going to allow me to buy a high-capacity assault weapon. Whereas those damn liberals won't do that. Or what happened, especially with Trump, is when Congress passed the 1993 NAFTA bill. That was a disaster. Some of our most successful corporate cities went into failure, like Detroit and Pontiac and Flint, Michigan. Large textile companies in the Carolinas lost their businesses.
Let's
And
drill into that a little bit, though, Professor. Isn't it? Don't we? Don't a lot of us, not all of us, as we're going to illustrate, you and I, don't we tend to forget? And doesn't a large portion of the media tend to forget that what made Trump different? The one memory that I always tend to point to, and most repeat regular listeners will probably be sick of me pointing this example out. I believe it was one of the Republican debates, primary debates. I believe when they had the height of their number of candidates, there was 17 of them, 18 of them, 290 of them. I don't remember at this point how many of them there were. But Trump was near the center because, of course, they based stage positioning on how they were polling at the time. And he looked to both sides of him and said, every single one of these people want to cut and end your Social Security. They want to end Medicare. They want to eliminate the minimum wage. They want to continue to send more of your jobs to China. And I won't do any of that. And they want to raise taxes on you. And they want to continue to cut taxes on rich people. And I won't do any of that. He ran on a progressive platform. Now, hindsight tells us, first off, those of us who were realistic enough and knew better, knew he was going to do none of those things. Because the people that were bankrolling him at the time didn't want to see any of that. But he was running on a progressive platform.
he definitely was.
And isn't that partly what made him, if we combine that with what you just said? I realize I'm bouncing my question around a little bit. Forgive me. The thoughts are, generating in my brain as I'm speaking to you. If we combine what you just told us about the thoughts of the abandoned folks in the old Confederacy, in the upper Midwest that has been bought out by the Koch network and turned into deep red areas they never used to be, and the quote unquote forgotten man, if you combine those areas, the poor white population, the deindustrialized areas, the folks who have had literally everything taken from them, combine that with the subtle racism he used and what you just mentioned of, well, sure, he's a billionaire and a demagogue, but darn it, he's mine.
That's right.
And he's running on a progressive platform of, those rich people screwed you. They stuck it to you. And I'm going to fix it even though I'm rich. I'm going to fix it because I already have a ton of money. I don't need any more money.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of the forgotten component here? Isn't it all a little too convenient that we forget that component, that he ran on that progressive message? I'm not going to ruin Social Security. I'm going to protect it and expand it. Can
That's
you
right.
comment on that? What are your thoughts on that?
You are exactly right. And that's how he won the Republican nomination for president. But he was running against
message.
He was running against Republicans. And so he
on
gave
a progressive message,
on
a Bernie Sanders message.
And that's why he beat him. But when he ran against Democrats, he did the opposite. And as I'm saying, probably the most important thing that he ran on is he blamed Democrats for NAFTA.
Let's remember, by the way, what Trump was quoted as saying, and he said it more than once, And he said it more than once before he officially decided to run, that if he ever ran for president, he would run as a Republican because they were the quote unquote dumber party. They were the ones that were going to buy anything he had to spew because Democrats wouldn't fall for it. He said that in public, said it in several interviews. Republicans would fall for it. Democrats were too smart to buy it.
Yeah.
He said it outright.
Yeah. That's
Also
something
said he would be the first person to make money off the presidency. He sure as hell has done that.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, I apologize, Professor. I stepped on your answer, but could you speak to that? I think, I don't think it's an accident, by the way. I'm kind of branching off of your answer before you even give it to me, but don't you think it's all a little too convenient that the big money corporate media just happens to forget to mention that it was a progressive message that Trump ran on? Progressive messages work. They win. They win. It's what people want to hear because it's what they want to see.
Yeah.
It's what they want government to do.
That's right.
The New Deal still wins and works.
Mm-hmm. But the problem with the way reality works is that people tend to believe a demagogue who says he can give the public what they want, all these things that they want, because he's a smarter businessman than anybody else. And the fact that they don't realize that somebody who habitually lies and who habitually takes advantage of other people and has been demonstrated to do that will lie to get support from the voters. And they got to realize that character matters. And the character of the person is more important than what he says. And if they don't learn to distinguish between a demagogue and a genuine leader, by learning what he does, they're going to prefer the destructive achiever or the demagogue rather than somebody who levels with them and tell them, hey, I can't solve these problems without raising taxes. Now, everybody wants a more progressive environment. They want Social Security. They want minimum wages. They want workers to be making more decent income. But even though that's what they want, they tend to go for the person who promises it quickly and painlessly. And if they don't understand that Democrats lie, or that demagogues lie, and they practice the art of inoculation, and that's a demagogic technique that is probably one of the most important ones, and yet it's one of the least well-known demagogic techniques. You blame your opponent for doing what you're doing. And so Donald Trump said that Hillary Clinton
constantly do that. My goodness gracious. Isn't that a constant? Just shove off onto everyone else what you're doing.
Trump said that Hillary Clinton was the most divisive person ever to run for president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, at one point, she called Trump supporters a basket of undesirables.
Deplorables. Yep. The basket of deplorables.
Yeah. And she said that. And based on that one comment, Republicans all over the country then said that Hillary Clinton is more divisive than President Trump. And then they inoculate Trump further by saying, look at how they've been treating Trump. Liberals and progressives and Democrats were criticizing and belittling Trump even before he ran for president. They were belittling him when he was a businessman in New York and New Jersey. And then when he descended the elevator and he started talking about different things, they belittled him horribly. Now, the fact that he deserved it is irrelevant to the Republicans. And Republicans are still doing that. Republican senators right now are saying that Democrats and progressives are more divisive than President Trump is because they belittle him no matter what he does. But the fact is, everything he does just about deserves criticism. And inoculation is one of the techniques of a demagogue, and you need to recognize that and recognize that's what's going on right now today in the Republican Party. They're saying it's the Democrats who are dividing America, not the Republicans. And another technique is accusing the news media of being fake news. That's what demagogues always do. That's a sign of it. And people ought to recognize that. That, you can't believe the Washington Post, the New York Times. You got to believe Fox News. And I don't think people believe that initially, but when you hear it from several Republican senators and you hear it from all kinds of talk radio hosts, and it comes at you from many different directions, you begin to believe it. And so what you're doing is exactly what needs to be done now, but from many more sources. And the things that I've been writing about point things like this out. And people have to know that a characteristic of a bad leader is he criticizes the professionals who report accurately what's going on. And they have to criticize, we have to discredit the news media. And by the way, an excellent book was The Rise of the Right by William Rusher. And he described, this was back in Reagan years. Mm-hmm. He said that the only way Democrats or Republicans are going to win an election is to discredit the news media. And they've been doing that ever since. And when the civil rights legislation came about in the 60s, a lot of people saying, hey, the South isn't treating blacks badly. It's the liberals who are stirring them up. And it's the biased liberal news media. And that became a mantra among conservatives in the 1960s. They bought into that.
There's actually it's been described as a fringe movement, and sad what the professor is referring to, and sadly it's growing, and it's frightening, to be honest, how much it's growing. That and it is on the right. It is on again what is referred to as a fringe right, except I find that term a bit of an oxymoron because the right itself is fringe. That, and this has been actually taught in some of the more right-wing states, and especially across the Confederacy, folks. For the audience here, although I am talking to the professor as well, for those of you listening and watching, I speak to you as well. I'm not just talking to the professor. He well knows this. I don't need to inform him of this. He well knows this. There is a growing movement inside the right wing. It's being taught as a historical principle, as though it were fact, that slavery wasn't all that bad. We actually improved the lives of these folk when we brought them here.
Sure.
And it's a way to try to drive. There's several theories behind it that it's a justification of slavery. It is a way to sort of try to take. I don't want to say take the sting out of it. That almost sounds trite, but to try to drive a wedge, shall we say, between the Democratic Party and communities of color, since it is the Democratic Party, especially since the 60s, since Kennedy, I would say, although I would take it back to Roosevelt, who wanted to do more for communities of color and was stopped sometimes by his own party. But to drive that wedge, that's something the professor and I can get more into. Let me get to my business here. I usually do this at the bottom of every hour. I'm getting a little lax on my resets here. It is 5:37 Eastern time here on the Kennedy Effect, here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Eastern time zone here in the United States. 5:37 p.m. This is the Kennedy Effect for the 6th of December. We hope you had a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, however it is that you had to spend it. We hope you were safe. We hope you were distant, even though you did not want to be. No one wanted to be distant for Thanksgiving, but we hope you were anyway. If you have watched what is happening with this
virus. By the way, this virus is real. It is very, very, very real. I hope you have seen the numbers. I hope you know that these numbers are rising. Yes, there appears to be some good vaccine news on the horizon. Even Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, who I don't entirely trust Dr. Birx anyway, but at least from her initial work in this Trump task force, but she seems to be coming round to truth again. But I digress. We hope you were safe. We hope you are safe. We hope you are healthy. And we are just glad that you are with us. Let me just review again. Anywhere that you are watching us across the roughly 70 places now, between 60 and 70 places that we share this program, wherever you are watching and listening, thank you. Every single individual doing this right now, thank you. The Kennedy Effect community, that other side of information community continues to grow. Every single individual who is with us now live, or if you are watching later on in the week on the recording, thank you so very, very much. You can stay exactly where you are. Enjoy the rest of the program. We love it. Great. You're awesome. If you want to come to the home group page, that other side of information, please come on over. And that's where I'll see your name. I can say hello to you. We have Ronnie, Bill, Darlene, and Keith are currently in the room. Welcome to each and every one of you. There have been some other names that have come through that I didn't get a chance to see because my comments were not working at the moment. Thank you all for being there. If you want to enter comments, questions, you want to yell and disagree with me, you'd like to agree with me, you can put anything into the live chat. Please interact with us. This is not a lecture. This is your program. We want you to be part of the program. The Twitter page is open. I have it right in front of me. You can live tweet the program at That Kennedy Talk. Be part of the program. Also at That Kennedy Talk, give us a follow. If you are a Twitter user, please give us a follow. We have a whomping. Are you ready? Are you ready, everybody? Are you sitting down? The professor's sitting down. I'm glad he is because I know I'm going to knock his socks off when I say this. We have a whomping 11 Twitter followers, folks. Oh yeah. Yep, 11. You might need a stiff drink after that one. Yes, 11 Twitter followers. We are hot on the heels of President Obama on the followers. Any minute now, we'll be catching up to him. 11 Twitter followers, but you can live tweet us at That Kennedy Talk. Give us a follow as well. We would like to have you part of the Twitter family if you are more of a Twitter user than a Facebook user. Email the program at thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. That is the email address for all things the Kennedy Effect. Again, it's another way to contact and be part of the program. If you have a business, a product, a service that you want to promote, be an advertiser with us. We literally have a global audience. Literally a global audience. Hot101.net is consumed by listeners all over the planet. So whether your business is a local neighborhood business or an international business, this is the place for you to promote it. You can email us thatotherkennedy@gmail.com and let's talk about it. Hey, sisters, brothers, family at hot101.net, thank you again for welcoming us onto your speakers, your devices, your homes, your cars, however it is that you listen to the program. Thank you so much for being there. We appreciate you. We are here with you again on another Sunday evening. Thanks for being there. It is time to inform, educate, and engage. We want you to be part of the program. We will be opening up the phone line probably at the top of the hour, and we just want you to be here, be part of the program. We want to engage with you. Our guest is Professor Charles Kelly. We are talking about how demagogues come to power in even places like the United States, even countries like here that we like to hold up as the paragons of virtue and the rock solid democracies that we believe ourselves to be. Well, guess what? We aren't. We aren't. It's President Carter that told, former President Carter, that told Tom Hartman live on his program a few years back that the United States is no longer a democracy. We are no longer a democratic republic. We are, in fact, an oligarchy where a very small handful of very, very, very rich people now control everything that happens in this country. And that's part of what we're discussing with the professor now. As we move on into the program, we'll discuss other things like FDR and the New Deal and how we can get ourselves out of this trouble, how we can restore the America that we had from 1932 to 1980. Yeah, folks, trust me. You know, one of my most favorite and infamous rants, he tried to say. English, Jeff, try English. One of my most famous or infamous rants is the following. One of the wonderful, wonderful things about the Gregorian calendar is that it is numerical and sequential. This is 2020. It presupposes the fact that there was a 2019 and a 2018 and a 2017, a 1980 and a 1979 and a 78 and a 76. As God is my witness, folks, there was a nation before Ronald Reagan. And it worked. It functioned. In fact, it functioned very, very well. And it functioned very, very well for a vast majority of people, a much, much more vast majority of people than now. And we can restore that nation. It is not impossible. Not by a long shot. We can restore that country. But we'll get into that with the professor as we proceed here throughout the evening. We will open up the phone line later on in the program. Again, probably after the top of our second and the beginning of our second hour. Professor, I asked you earlier on in the hour and we drifted away from it, and I will take responsibility for that because I tend to drift all over the place, but you are the focused one here among us. I will take responsibility for that. What makes or made Trump different from, let's say, George W. Bush, who also lost the national vote and was installed by the Supreme Court, won an electoral college vote, but not a national vote? What makes Trump different from George W. Bush?
Well, first of all, before I give my opinion about that issue, let me refer to a previous comment that you made when you said that the Republicans are trying to drive a wedge between the Democratic Party and our Black citizens. And a classic example of how that's easy to do is the NAFTA agreement that we made in 1993, because buses.
The final vote was then it was signed by a quote unquote Democratic president. The original negotiations, as we know, started in the Reagan administration, finalized in the first George H.W. Bush administration, the final vote, and it was signed by President Clinton.
Right. But I conducted a 3-session workshop in our Unitarian church. Excuse me, I got a cat trying to enter this discussion here.
Oh, let a cat in. I got 2 cats too. It's just life.
Yeah. I did 3-session workshops for my Unitarian church. And the people there were about 20 people were there, and they're all interested in politics and economics. And the subject was political economics. And I asked them which president signed the NAFTA agreement between the president of Mexico and the vice and the chairman of the
Prime Minister of China?
prime minister
of Canada.
Canada. Only 3 people ventured an opinion, and they said it was Clinton.
Mhm.
And if you were to ask 100 random people on the streets today, and you asked them who was responsible for NAFTA, they would say it was the Democrats. And that's the correction that we've got to make and let people know that it was not the Democrats. But what this resulted in was buses going from Tijuana, Mexico to meat processing plants in the Carolinas, in North Carolina.
And Iowa up into Illinois and the Dakotas.
And
Absolutely.
there were black our citizens throwing rocks at those buses. So a lot of blacks feel that even their low-wage jobs are at risk because of NAFTA, and that was done by Democrats. And here I blame Democrats for doing a lousy job of educating the public. And Hillary Clinton, instead of condemning NAFTA in very strong terms, she said it needed to be renegotiated because it needed to be fixed a little bit. Trump said it had to be totally discarded. Bernie Sanders said basically the same thing, that it had to be totally done differently. And what Trump did, instead of doing, and international trade is excellent when it benefits both countries. Let every country do what they do best and share in the wealth. But it shouldn't be based on low wages. If it's based on low wages, it's always a disaster for the countries that do that. And what Trump did, instead of seeing tariffs, the legitimate use of tariffs is to benefit both countries. Keep low-wage products from coming into the United States, like machinery made by workers making 1/10 as much money. But in Mexico's version, keep low-wage subsidized corn from coming into Mexico, which devastated millions of Mexican farmers. And so a good trade agreement would protect both of them, or each country should do some kind of provision. Mexico should, if they're going to allow us to import subsidized corn into Mexico, Mexico needs to figure out some way to make it whole, make their farmers whole who are becoming impoverished. And in the United States, if we're going to use manufactured goods coming into the United States, we've got to make sure that the people who lose their jobs get compensated for it, that they get different jobs and better jobs, they get training for it. We didn't do that. Not nearly.
Well, no, because then, that would have probably meant keeping the top marginal tax rate at 74%, or perhaps even where it should be at 91 or even higher, 94%. But where it was, by the way, during a Republican president, 74% where it was during a Republican president, Richard Nixon, and 91% where it was, by the way, during another Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower. And rich people might actually have to, oh my gosh, aghast, pay taxes. We can't have that. But even before those trade deals, Professor, doesn't this really all start? Again, if you have Reagan on your Kennedy effect bingo card, mark it in right now. Doesn't this begin with the Reagan administration unilaterally dismantling the U.S. tariff and import tax system unilaterally? When Reagan came to office, or came to power, I think, which is more the right way to say it, when the Reagan administration came to power in January 20th of 1981, the United States was, at that point, the largest creditor nation on earth, which means we were the largest loaner of money anywhere on the planet. We had the largest industrial base of any country on the earth. We had the largest middle class of any country on earth. We imported more raw materials than any country on earth and exported more finished goods than any country on earth. At the end of Reagan's 8 years, even before we got into George H.W. Bush's 4 years, we had become the largest debtor nation on earth. We had begun to dismantle the middle class. We had become the largest importer of finished goods and the largest exporter of raw materials. The United States is now the largest exporter. Our three largest exports are armaments. That means weapons, folks. Military goods. Fossil fuels. And human hair.
Okay.
So
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Before we even get to NAFTA, as bad and disastrous as NAFTA was, and remember Ross Perot running for president in '92 and got over 20% of the vote, by the way, telling us all what a disaster NAFTA was going to be. And he was 100% correct.
He was.
This really begins, doesn't it begin before NAFTA? It begins with Reagan. It begins there. The dismantling of our tariff system, a tariff system that had been in place since George Washington, since Alexander Hamilton proposed it to Washington for the sake of building an industrial society in the first damn place.
It actually began with the beginning of our country, whereas people who manufacture things, people who go into business want to minimize wage costs, labor costs. And that issue has been present since the beginning. And Reagan made it more important. And one of the statistics that really indicates Reagan's values and his effects is a consumer price index. Because when the year in 1980, the consumer price index went up 14%. And when he left office 8 years later, it was less than 4%. And so Reagan and Republicans bragged about how Ronald Reagan stopped inflation, but he didn't. Ronald Reagan stopped wage inflation that had been going on since 1941. That's what he stopped. Because between 1980 and 1988, the stock market, the Dow Jones, more than doubled. And the average price of a home almost doubled. So people who had stocks and bonds, and rich people, and people who had a lot of real estate made out like bandits. It's the workers who stopped buying things. Because in 1980, when we had
they didn't have any damn money anymore.
Yeah, it was workers who were this huge amount of workers who were making very good incomes, who were buying electric drills and ladders and all kinds of things that go into the consumer price index. And they were able to even buy a home and maybe have a cabin in the woods someplace for hunting, or a trailer with a boat on it where they could go fishing. And the people had a very good standard of living because they were making good wages, and their wages had been going up for 40 years. Their standards of living had been going up. Reagan stopped that. He decided that he famously said he was proud to be a member of a party where people can still get rich, as though people hadn't been getting rich from 1940 to 1980. And people were getting rich between 1940 and 1980, but they just weren't a new class of American aristocracy. And today, when people are getting rich, they're like the aristocrats of old. They can buy yachts, $300 million yachts. They can buy islands in the Caribbean. They can do so many things that rich people didn't used to be able to do, but now they can. And
remember that
there's been a lot of.
It's important to remember here what the professor's talking about. Let's just to support this with some facts. When the professor talks about good union, quote unquote, good union jobs, we tend to throw that phrase around a lot. And we tend to throw it around as if it doesn't mean too much anymore. union wages support wages across the spectrum.
Of course. Of
They
course.
are the floor that holds up the rest of the house, whether you are in that union or not.
Yeah, because
Roughly just
corporations,
under 38% of the private sector was unionized when Reagan came to power. That was, again, January 20th, 1981. Just under 38% of the private sector, that would mean non-governmental workers, were unionized at that point. It is now under 6%. For comparison, around 75% of private sector workers in Germany are unionized. If there is a company that has 500 or more employees, the union must be represented on its board of directors. It's in their constitution. Do you know who put that in their constitution? We did, the United States, after World War II. Upwards of 86%, might even be higher, in the Scandinavian countries are unionized. Their economies are rock solid and steady. They do not have the wealth inequality that we have, and they also don't go through these massive ebbs and flows that we go through. This is part of what the professor is talking about. When you knock out those unions and their wages across the board go down. And this is not advanced economics here either, by the way, folks. If you have a business, if you are a business owner listening to us right now, you know, as a matter of fact, there's only so many ways to increase profits. You can sell more, or you can cut costs. You increase revenue, or you cut expenditures. And labor is an expenditure. But it also has been proven, Seattle, the city of Seattle, is the example. When you raise the minimum wage, or when you raise wages generally, if you don't want to focus on the minimum wage, or you have the hair goes up in the back of your neck when you hear raise the minimum wage. When you pump money into the system, when you give people money who need 100% of that income just to survive, the economy explodes with activity. Period. There's simply zero data to prove otherwise. This is why the professor and I will eventually get into going back to the New Deal and why the New Deal can save us now. When you give workers a raise, they spend that money. That's how economies work. That money then ripples throughout the economy. I get a raise. The professor gets a raise. It gives us more income. We take that income and then we spend it. We spend it on what we need to keep ourselves literally alive. We spend it on groceries. We spend it on clothing, on housing, on utilities, on doctors, food. The folks that then own those shops and stores, et cetera, then go spend it with their vendors on their employees, who then go spend it. Jeff Bezos hoarding another $100 billion does nothing for anyone. No one. It doesn't help anybody. It's called it's actually a psychological disorder called hoarding. When you open up a house and someone has 250 cats or has been keeping every single newspaper since 1950, it's hoarding. It doesn't help anyone. Tax breaks for the rich don't help anyone. There's an old saying, stop pissing on me and tell me it's raining. It's not. Trickle down doesn't work. It's a myth. It's a lie. It doesn't work. The money has to go in at the bottom. It gets spent and it ripples throughout the economy. even a conservative majority government in the United Kingdom right now, Great Britain, is giving money, direct payments to all workers who have been asked or ordered to stay home because of this virus so they can stay alive, make their mortgage payments, make their rent payments. If, by the way, those payments have not been suspended, and lots of them have been suspended, but so they can keep that money rippling through the economy and keep the economy running. Us? Nope. Nope. It's an oligarchical fantasy land here. It's a fascist fantasy land here. A
Well,
tiny, tiny handful of folks at the top controlling everything and all the money. And the rest of you, oh, you're starving? Too damn bad. Too
what
damn
you're talking
bad.
about, what you're talking about now is true. But
70 million people, Professor, last month in October. 70 million Americans paid their rent with a credit card. That means no one has any damn money left. That is a skyscraper built on sand. It will come tumbling down. It has to. These are not advanced economic principles. It has to. It's exactly why the New Deal, we need another New Deal. You call it what you want. If you're scared to death of the term Green New Deal, fine. I won't call it that. I don't want you to pee yourself. But that's exactly, it's going to take New Deal style economics. Because if we are not living the exact definition of a depression, we will be soon. This vaccine's not coming tomorrow or next week. We're looking at summer or late summer or early fall for enough people to be vaccinated if we are lucky. And even then, it doesn't mean that everything is going to be automatically back to normal and that all the businesses that have been lost during this are suddenly going to reopen. All the big businesses are going to be fine. They'll all be fine. The Amazons and the Home Depots and the McDonald's of the world and the Walmarts, God freaking knows, and the Targets are all going to be fine. But the mom and pops and the individual single-owned family restaurants and clothing shops and greeting card shops, once they're gone, they're gone. So it's not just going to be the same as soon as we're all vaccinated. It's going to take New Deal style economics to save this country and the global economy, unless you're China. And I've completely stepped on and taken a whole bunch of time from the professor, and I apologize, Professor. I got myself on quite a rant there.
Well, let me just build on what you just got through saying. And we can refer to our own history in the last 6 months. When the first CARES Act was passed by Congress, and they designated a $3 trillion deficit to save the economy. And we actually had a good result from those 3 months of the spending of the $3 trillion. And people were able to survive. And the reason it's important to go into deficit spending to do that is because if your economy tanks, you can't recover. And as you say, that paltry $900 million that they're proposing now isn't nearly enough. It should be at least $3 trillion and probably more than that. Because if we don't solve this economy, we're going to have a depression. And one thing that I would slightly modify from what you just said, some big corporations are going to go down too, because they already have, like J.C. Penney. I've shopped J.C. Penney my entire life. They had good products and quality and cheaply priced. and they've gone off. They've gone bankrupt.
But
And
don't worry, Professor. The CEO got a 15 mil. No, I think it was 21. Sorry, $21 million bonus payment.
yeah,
Don't worry,
yeah.
he's okay.
And
He's okay.
the point of my first book, The Destructive Achiever, is that I'm afraid that corporate America is dominated by destructive achievers. And I've seen levels of incomes that they're serving on their own board of directors, and they say that we're providing jobs for so many people who are doing such good things, we deserve to be well compensated, even though their lowest level of workers are hardly staying above inflation. That is, the lucky ones. And many people aren't staying above inflation without doing two jobs. And
Which is why the unemployment rate is no longer really a valid measure.
It's not at all. It's not at all. It doesn't include people.
It's a labor participation rate.
That's right. It's
which is, by the way, the lowest it's been since the Great Depression.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we're headed for another depression if we don't do something soon and important. And I do quite a bit of reading to keep up with what's going on since I'm an ex-professor. And I think one of the most important books for 2020 is Paul Krugman's book, Arguing with Zombies. And he's just pointing out that over the last 100 years, our financial record demonstrates quite clearly that deficit spending is sometimes vital. It's not only a good thing to do, it's essential. And when your economy is in trouble, to go into deficit spending to save it, that's a good investment. Now, on the other hand, to go into a deficit to give tax breaks to rich people and corporations, that's not a good use of a deficit. And you've got to distinguish between the two. And too many people feel that the Republican tax breaks that they gave recently, they benefited from it. Everybody benefited from it. But most people, I think something like 92% of it went to the people at the top. And so that's a bad tax, but it pacified a lot of people, made them favorable to the Republicans who brought that about.
And by the way, the folks that, if you make $70,000 or under, starting January 1st, 2021, you are getting a tax increase under that same legislation. You are getting a tax increase. Well, and we'll be getting yearly tax increases for the next 10 years, unless that legislation is overturned. And if you make $30,000 or less, you will be getting an even larger tax increase, because goodness knows the folks with the most ability to pay taxes are the poorest people. Goodness knows.
Yeah. Well, let me compliment you on your memory of details like that, because I've heard about 4 or 5 of your podcasts that you did with other people, and you have a great, tremendous grasp of details that you remember, and I don't.
Well, I only got about 10 of them. I use them over and over again.
Well, you remain current and you remember it all. I've probably forgotten 90% of what I ever knew about the economy, especially what went on in the New Deal. I know key things, major concepts. I remember those, and I can remember the details quite clearly because I've written about them. But when I write about them, I've got to go back online to make sure my memory is correct. I've got to go back online and find out now who was vice president at this time, who was this, when did that happen? Is my memory correct when I say that this happened?
Well, as I explained to you before we went live, sir, that's why I keep the other computers going in front of me so I can always check and make sure I'm right. Yeah. And I always encourage folks, as desperately as I encourage folks to engage with me on this program, that is one of the main things that I encourage folks to encourage me are encouraged to engage me on. If I am wrong about something, you get to me. Email me, text me, send a comment through Facebook, tweet it, do whatever you have to do. If I'm wrong, you correct me. And I am happy to learn what I do not know. And I'm happy to admit what I do not know. I am not an economist. Never, 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 never take investment advice from me. I am not an economist. But it is incumbent upon all of us to at least know the very, very basics of how an economy works. If we don't know the basics of how this economy functions, if you don't know the basics of how government functions, how can you participate in it? It's no accident. This is another something that I usually do every single program, and I'll continue to do it until everybody has it memorized. Speaking of memory, it is no accident that when Reagan came to power, one of his first appointments was William Bennett as the Secretary of Education. And one of the first things that William Bennett did was to end civics and education. To end the requirement for civics and education. Because if you don't know how your government works, it's very hard to complain about what your government is doing. Mm-hmm. And it's also very hard to understand what your government is doing. It also becomes very much easier to become a complacent and easily manipulated populace. It becomes much easier for your government then to turn back on you and tell you, don't worry about that. We'll take care of it. You don't need to know how that functions. Just pat you on the head and send you into the corner, and pull you out every 2 to 4 years and say, by the way, we need your vote, register that vote, and then send you back into the corner. It's not an accident. And we're now 4 decades into an extreme lack of civics education. One of my other hats is the hat of political consultant, as one of 5 partners in the Blue Collective Political Consultancy. And we've actually had candidates, people who want to run for office, that I've actually had to give civics lessons to. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's shocking. It's also damn disappointing. Folks who were born in the Reagan era, who only know a United States post-Reagan, that I have had to explain civics to, because we don't teach it anymore. It's easy to just pat you on the head and send you on your way. Yeah. But Professor, you have taught about and written about the New Deal. Tell us why. Tell us what the New Deal is. What is the New Deal in its most basic form? What is the New Deal? What was the New Deal to you in its most basic form? What was the New Deal?
In its most basic form, the New Deal was a government that decided to progressively tax rich people a lot and go into deficit spending to finance programs that benefited workers in the middle class and poor. And that's exactly what they did. When Roosevelt became president, I think the top income tax was maybe 30%, 35%. In 1941, it became 91%. And we had the largest deficit in our history as a percentage of the gross domestic product in 1947, where the deficit was 120% of the gross domestic product, which is the highest ever until recently. It's there now. And the reason it was at the highest level.
It wasn't until 41 that the highest marginal tax rate hit 91%. I thought it went straight to 91% as soon as Roosevelt came to office.
No, it didn't. It went up in stages.
Okay.
It went up in stages, and then it may have been 1939 or 40. I'm not clear about that. And the estate tax went up to 40%, I think. And that tax rate lasted until 1962. The income tax rate lasted until 1962, and it was reduced to
74%.
yeah, something like that. And what that deficit did, we got the Marshall Plan that was helped the companies, the countries in trouble in Europe and elsewhere. We financed college education for millions of GIs. It financed the development of research institutes that looked into solving health problems and environmental problems. It did all kinds of great things for our country. And it was basically the main reason we developed the greatest middle class in the history of the world between 1941 and 1980. And probably the most important single legislations, which would be relevant today, is the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. Because in 1937, we had an unemployment rate of about 19.9%. And children under 16 were working full-time jobs in manufacturing plants. And workers were making like, I forget what it was, 25 cents an hour or something like that. And the Fair Labor Standards Act said that, okay, in 1938, children under 16 cannot work in full-time jobs except for farm jobs where they're working for their family. But in the non-farm jobs, if you're under 16, you can't work them. And everybody in the whole United States had to make at least 29 cents an hour. That meant that Alabama couldn't have a lower standard of wage than say, New York. It applied to the whole country. And so corporations couldn't pit states against each other in offering lower wages than 29 cents an hour. And let's see, what else happened? They protected the rights.
Weren't we essentially, didn't Roosevelt essentially, again, I'm boiling this down to a very simple level, to a very base level for ease of explanation. Didn't Roosevelt, for all intent and purpose, tell the private sector, you have failed to employ people, you have failed to stimulate the economy in and of by yourself, therefore the government will become the employer of last resort, and we will become that employer through massive infrastructure spending. We built schools, we sent electricity to massive areas of the country that never had it, sent running water to parts of the country that never had it. We built post offices. They built the protective seawall in Newport, Rhode Island, because I've seen it. I've seen the brass plaque that says that this was a product of the Works Project Administration. Easy for me to say, or at least some of those plaques that haven't been stolen yet, because a lot of them have actually been chipped right out of the stone and taken for souvenirs. We built well, it was very early on, but we actually did build airports, believe it or not. They built roads, they built massive drainage systems and water treatment systems and dams. And we took people who were unemployed and you're going to do this, and then paid them directly. And again, going back to what we had talked about earlier on in the program, here's a check, here's money, and now go spend it.
That's
and
right.
Those folks went and spent that money, and they spent it on rent, mortgages, food, cars, schooling, clothes, and it rippled throughout the economy. Isn't that essentially what the New Deal was? Or am I oversimplifying it? Am I missing something that I should include here, Professor?
No, you've included in much greater detail what I just got through saying. you're more thorough.
Because
And
private
remember
industry wasn't
right.
doing these things.
Yeah,
Because private industry said we're not going to make enough profit by taking telephone lines out to rural Iowa and Nebraska and the Appalachia, and we're not going to make enough money. So the hell with it. We're not going to do with it.
That's right.
So Roosevelt said, fine, get the hell out of the way. We'll do it.
Well, not only that, Roosevelt financed the construction of the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is still being used by millions and millions of people. It's still there, and it's still functioning, and it's still thriving.
The Tennessee Valley Authority still operates.
Yeah, and people were paid just to plant trees where trees weren't growing, and to do all kinds of things that weren't being done before. And as you say, and that's the same situation we're following right now. And the reason the Fair Labor Standards Act is so important, it tells us what government can do when private industry isn't doing it. And what we're losing a lot of jobs now due to automation and robotics can replace 30 workers by one worker in unloading ships and planes and things like that. And we've got to figure out a way, what are we going to do with all these people who are losing these jobs? Well, maybe we should pass a law which says that the average worker should make a decent income working 32 hours for work 4 days a week. That would be one of the solutions, but nobody would dare suggest that today because we've become such a conservative country.
Well, it's done, and it is done in Europe, by the way.
We can't let workers make that much money because it would cut out corporate profits, which are benefiting very rich people to begin with. And by the way, when it comes to international trade, the big winners of international trade weren't American consumers who were buying shirts at Walmart for 18 bucks. It was the people who were importing those shirts. We should have been paying like $7 for those shirts. The people who were really making out were the people who were running the system. And so fair trade, if it was done right, it would benefit everybody. But when it's managed by people who are looking out only for the interests of the wealthy and the investors and the corporations, you get trade deals that are not good for most people. Even though they're paying less for everything, they should be paying much less for everything.
Professor, when one of the great, what I find to be misnomers about, let me start over because it's a bad way to ask the question. Let me try to correct myself here. Let me try to reorient myself here. One of the pushbacks, I'll try to be a little more gracious. What are the pushbacks that you will get from the right? And it's actually something that Trump used a lot in his post-primary campaign. I think it's a fallacy. I think it's a falsehood. Again, because of economics, is that government needs to run more like a business. We can't have another New Deal because government must run like a business. With that said, and that's why a second New Deal, a Green New Deal, an environmental New Deal, whatever you want to call it, is impossible because of these massive deficits and debts and so on. We can't run that. We can't have these debts and deficits. If you were a business, you'd be out of business by now. But isn't that actually quite a big bucket full of crap, to be blunt? Because government is not a business. Because businesses do not control monetary policy. Governments control monetary policy. Businesses do not print money. They do not control the value of money, the worth of money. They do not mint coins. They cannot extend credit to governments or in between governments. They don't control central banks. So if the United States wanted to undertake, if the new Biden administration wanted to undertake a second Rooseveltian style New Deal, the fact that the national debt is 100% of GDP is irrelevant. The United States controls its monetary policy. We are not a business. Government is not a business, and therefore should not be run like a business. The only time the United States government has ever been 100% debt and deficit free was during the Andrew Jackson administration in 18 oh goodness, it was in the 1820s, I believe it was, and we had a massive economic calamity because there was zero government spending into the private sector. Or into the public sector, into the public sector. There was zero government spending. There was no spending on roads or schools or posts, post offices or mail delivery or anything. There was zero, or into the military even. No government spending. And it was a massive economic calamity. So isn't this idea that government must run like a business, isn't that just sort of a load of crap?
Of course it is. Of course it is. The role of government is to make sure that all of its citizens are prospering. And the way you do that is you're constantly monitoring what is going on. For example,
promote the general welfare, correct? That's right in the Constitution, to promote the general welfare.
For example, if workers are making more money and causing inflation, the federal government has to increase Social Security payments to people who are retired and who no longer have an income coming from working. And so they have to constantly monitor what's happening to individuals. Or how come blacks are not making as much money as Caucasians are? Or any subgroup of citizens that are not doing as well as they should, as a just economy would dictate. And government is responsible for all its citizens and not just segments of it. And so they want to do what's best for everybody. And that's constantly changing. It's constantly changing. And it's important that rich people have enough money to invest in jobs, but they shouldn't make so much money that there's not enough left for the people who aren't investing. And there have been a lot of books demonstrating the necessity of having a progressive income tax on rich people, because if they don't.
Let's remember too, Professor, you know this. Let's remember where the idea of the progressive income tax started. Let's remember where the idea of the estate tax started and where the inheritance tax started. These three taxes and the ideals and the reasons that they needed, or at least that the originators, the founders, felt they needed to be included to quote unquote prevent the establishment of a permanent upper class.
That's right.
Jefferson and Madison themselves.
Well, that's been the
part of why we fought a revolution, Professor, against the permanent upper class.
That's the history of the world.
It's the history of this nation. It's the history of the world.
My favorite book, my all-time favorite single book, is The Lessons of History by Will and Oriel Durant, who wrote the 11-volume story of civilization. And one of the things that they mentioned in this book is how people like me and you probably, and my wife, cause the degeneration of a nation. And the reason we cause that is because we're successful. And naturally, we want our children to be successful. And so I don't have my own children. You know, I'm in my second marriage, but my wife has 3 kids. They went to Duke and Harvard. And in other words, we make sure that they're going to have the advantage, all the advantages they need to become successful. And when they go to these prestigious colleges, they're going to meet other people who are in similar situations. They're going to have contacts with politicians. that they can actually call on the phone and talk to. And so they can do all kinds of very good things to enhance their own standard of living. And they're going to want to do the same thing for their children. But what happens is that other people who don't have these advantages gradually lose pace to inflation that people like you and me and my wife are causing. And if government doesn't do something to change that scenario, it continues and it gets worse. And so in other words, they've got to make sure that successful people really deserve more. They're doing good things. They're contributing to society. And they do deserve more, but they don't deserve a whole lot more. And when they start taking too much, like our present modern aristocracy is doing, there's not enough left for everybody else. And you end up with people in food lines. And these huge lines of cars trying to get food for their family. That's where we are right now, because there's so many people like us are taking too much.
This is an excellent time for me to reset the program yet again. I have failed to do so. I'm supposed to be doing it for you folks at the top and bottom of every hour, and I have failed to do so yet again. So let me do so. It is 6:34, just before 6:35 Eastern Time here in the United States, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and this is the Kennedy Effect for 6 December 2020. We hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We took a week off during the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. We are back with you live, 6:35 Eastern Time here in the United States, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Our guest is Dr. Charles Kelly, Professor Kelly, speaking about how autocrats come to power, FDR, the New Deal, the economic storm and trough that we are in here in the United States. If you are watching us anywhere on the 60 to 70 different places that you can find us across the Facebook universe, thank you all, each and every single one of you, for being there. We appreciate it very, very, very much, wherever you may fall on the political spectrum. And don't try to hide, folks. I know there are Republicans and self-identified conservatives out there listening, but you are welcome here, every single one of you, wherever you may fall on the political spectrum. We appreciate you. You are respected and honored here. Simply because we may disagree does not mean that you are not respected and welcomed here. You are, every single one of you. I'm correct about things, but it doesn't mean that we don't respect you here. By the way, you can come to our home Facebook page, our home group Facebook page. It is a public page. You can apply to become a member of it, and we hope that you will do so. We welcome you. We'll take your applications, your membership applications, but the page is public. You can view it. That other side of information on Facebook is the home group page for all things the Kennedy Effect. That other side of information. That other side of information also happens to be the title of our YouTube channel. If you join us live throughout the course of the program, you can't catch the entire thing. You have to dip in and out. You miss something, you want to review something, rewatch it. Just go to YouTube and search for That Other Side of Information. That's also how you can find us. Let me check my cheat sheet here over my shoulder. That's also how you can find us on Instagram. That's where you can find the program. My associate producer and dear friend for almost 2 decades now, George, and I need to say, don't worry, I will embarrass George thoroughly about his birthday tomorrow later on in the program. I will embarrass him completely about that later on. That's where you can find us on Instagram, That Other Side of Information as well. The Twitter page is open and in front of me. I would love to say to you that it is being flooded with tweets, comments, and questions. However, it is not. But you can tweet us, and please become a follower. Give us a follow on Twitter at That Kennedy Talk, at That Kennedy Talk. Piece of cake. You can do that. It's super easy. I'm actually getting a little more accustomed to the Twitter. I do it more and more often all the time. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you use it. I hope you find us there. I hope you see what we are tweeting about. You will find show announcements there. You will find some articles, some information. Of course, that other side of information on Facebook is really the main home. You'll find a lot of articles there, a lot of substantiating materials about the topics we talk about. But that's the place to be there. That said, what else am I missing? Hey, sisters, brothers, friends, family, etc., on the hot101.net network. Thank you all for being there and welcoming us again into your homes, on your smart speakers, your devices, your cars, into your earbuds, into your brains, however it is that you consume hot101.net. We sincerely and humbly thank you. I am very, very proud to have this program part of the hot101.net family, and I appreciate all of you who listen each week. It is truly time to inform, educate, and engage on this program. Later on in the program, George and I will speak to you about something new that we have set up after we say goodnight to Dr. Kelly and let him get back to his life that I'm stealing precious time from him from. I will let him, we will say goodnight to him at some point. George and I will explain to you something new that we have set up. We have set up a Patreon, but we'll explain that to you later on in the program and how that works and what benefits and perks and fun stuff we can do through Patreon. We'll talk to you about that later on in the program. If you are watching on Facebook, you will see underneath in my square, because I am a square, in my square is the show phone number. The phone line is open. We can and will take your calls. If you have questions, comments, you want to yell, scream, kick, disagree, agree, show us some love, anything that you would like to do on the sole solitary phone line into the program, you can do that now. That phone line is open. Again, let me break the fourth wall with you a little bit and explain how it works. It is a very simple little piece of software called Google Voice. We use it primarily because it is free. That's why we use it. It is one phone line. So you can call the program, tell us your first name, where you're calling from, and you can speak to myself, to George, and to Professor Kelly. You can ask us a question, have a discussion with us, and join and engage with us on the program. Again, this is not just a lecture, it is your program. We would like you to be a part of it. And you know how much I have been hung up on these phone calls. I am, it's a thing for me, folks. We want you to be part of the program. Please pick up these wonderful devices and you can use them to make phone calls. It's incredible how those things work. But you can do that. You will see the phone number on the screen if you're watching through the video part of the program on Facebook. And for our sisters and brothers on the hot101.net friends and family, the phone line is 267 227 9189 267 227 9189 267 227 9189. There's an excellent chance that your call will come through while either Professor Kelly or myself is right in the middle of a sentence or a thought or whatever, because it's not actually call screening software. We're working on that. But we will take your phone call. We promise. We want you to be part of the program. 267-227-9189. So we turn back now after all of that technical stuff and all that fun stuff in the program reset. We return back to Professor Kelly. Professor, you'll see on the screen, George has put up FDR's second Bill of Rights, the Economic Bill of Rights. It was something that he laid out in a speech. I believe it was the acceptance speech for his third term, if I'm not mistaken, but I might have that wrong. He felt that these rights were so important. The original Bill of Rights were essentially political rights. They were civil rights, if I'm using the term correct. You know, freedom of speech and judicial rights, as for, you know, having a jury trial and you know, against false arrest and so on. And you know, they were political rights. But FDR felt that, and by the way, these economic rights have been codified into law throughout Europe. We are one of the few countries that have not codified these rights at a constitutional level. And he felt that these rights should be part of the Constitution. Is this not exactly the kind of initiative that would protect even the poorest, or the dare I say, if it's the right use of the word, the lowest worker among us from the corporations? And isn't that probably exactly why they were never part of the Constitution? It seems to me that maybe a better way to ask you the question would be that it seems to me, and I have said this for years, and I'm always surprised at the dumbfounded looks I get when I explain this. It seems to me that the reason the very richest, I often refer to them as the economic top 1%, and the largest corporations hate government and want to control it so badly, is because we know that government is the one overarching power that, quote unquote, we the people have endowed with the power to control exactly those same people and rein them in through regulation, through protections, through legislation. And that's why they hate government. So wouldn't this second Bill of Rights, wouldn't this economic Bill of Rights be exactly what we need in this country to level the playing field?
Sure, that's exactly right. And the title of my last book is Why Capitalism Thrives and How It Self-Destructs. And the point that I'm making there is that groups of people are always governed. There's never a group that isn't governed. It's true of your own family. In your own family, maybe the woman sort of makes the major decisions for the family. Maybe it's the husband, or maybe they share it pretty equally, but they're governed. And anytime you get three people together, somebody's running the discussion more than other people. And there's no such thing as an ungoverned group. The most powerful, influential people always govern. And if government, a democratically elected government, does not govern, then corporations govern. If the government doesn't set regulations about disposal of toxic waste, corporations decide how toxic wastes are going to be distributed. They can put it in the local river. Even the classic example of Somalia. Once it was said that Somalia wasn't governed, they had no government. Well, they did. They were governed by three tribes. And the tribe that governed most was the biggest tribe with the most weapons. And so you never, ever don't have government. And
there's been a lot of talk recently, Professor, about libertarianism. And there's a significant libertarian wing inside the Republican Party. And it comes, I believe, predominantly from the Kochs and the Koch network. David Koch ran for vice president in 1980 in the Libertarian Party. And if you folks, you can easily, do an internet search, Google or DuckDuckGo. If you don't want to be traced, use DuckDuckGo, by the way. And you can just, Google or search or DuckDuckGo, David Koch, 1980, vice president, Libertarian Party platform, any one of those combinations of words, and you'll see what he ran on. And you will be able to see, in fact, I have a meme for it. I should have sent it to George. He could put it up for us, but I haven't sent it to him. It's David Koch's 1980 Libertarian Political Party platform. And when you read it, you'll see that it is essentially every, for all intent and purpose, every single plank of it is now become part of the Republican Party. And isn't it isn't Somalia essentially, we've had several of these libertarian experiments throughout the world since Reagan, haven't we, Professor? Central America. I mean,
Sure.
they had the audacity in Central America to elect socialist or social democratic governments, and we couldn't have that in our own hemisphere, so the CIA overthrew them, and they became libertarian experiments, and they descended into tribal warfare. Somalia is currently a libertarian experiment. It has no real functioning government. It is a free-for-all. And what did we get? Pirates off the coast. Iraq, after the second Iraq war, after the war, the fake war that we were lied into by the George W. Bush administration, we tried libertarianism there. It descended into absolute chaos until the Iraqis themselves formed a parliament and formed a regular parliamentary system government. Libertarianism doesn't work. It's never worked ever in the history of man, has it? Or am I missing something?
Well, any attempt to eliminate government has never worked. If you're talking about an elected government by the people, if the government is run by somebody else, then what the libertarians want to do is they want to run the government. And if the government isn't running the country, then people with money and power will be able to do that. And the major reason the Republicans don't like the federal government and are in favor of states' rights is because if you put all the power in the states, you can pit states against each other in order for you to run it the way you want it to run. But I tell you what, I'm 88 years old right now, and I'm running out. And I've been sitting down here for about 2 hours. And when I get up to walk, I can hardly walk. The first 100 steps are very wobbly until I can loosen up. And so I'm pretty well running out right now. Do you have any closing issues that we need to discuss?
What I would like to do is throw the floor open to you, just open-ended. If there was any points, any facts, any thoughts, anything that we did not get an opportunity to cover, or anything that we didn't, any thoughts that we did not get to finish, if you could tell the folks how to find your books, please. I just want to very, very arbitrarily throw the floor open to you. And actually, we do have one question in the chat that I would like to ask you before you leave.
Okay. Well, first of all, I've got a website that I no longer maintain. I'm just getting around to doing it because I started focusing on print media. And but it has a lot of information on it, and it's democraticcapitalism.net. It's DEMOCRATIC, capitalism, all one line, .net. And I'm in the process of, I've got a friend who's updating it. It's going to have a totally new format, complete with pictures and things like that. And it's purely thought dominated. It's just a lot of statements. And the books can be gotten at through Amazon. The Destructive Achiever, Power and Ethics in the American Corporation is no longer in print. You can get it online, I think, for $35, which I don't get any of. You can also go to books.google.com and read it free, the entire book. In fact, you can read all of my first 3 books totally free by going to books.google.com. And the first book was The Destructive Achiever. The second book was The Great Limbaugh Con and Other Right-Wing Assaults Against Common Sense. The third one was Class War in America. All the material in that book came out of the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Fortune, Barron's, and Businessweek. And what I demonstrated is you don't have to read the biased liberal news media to know what's going on, because The Wall Street Journal is an excellent source of information about taxes and how their effect on the public, on unions and their effect. But their editorials don't match their news reports. They have very good reporters in the Wall Street Journal, but the editors don't seem to read their own paper. And the same thing is true with Business Week and Fortune and Barron's. Their editorials say one thing, but their reporters and their stories report something else. And the class war in America just demonstrates that you can find arguments for liberal causes by referring to reporters' columns in those magazines. And then my last one, you have to get it through Amazon.com, and it's Why Capitalism Thrives and How It Self-Destructs. And the whole point of everything I'm saying is that leadership is everything. And when people cite Venezuela or Cuba or other socialist countries as being failures, they're really attributing it to the system and not the people who are running it. Bad leaders will ruin any system. Good leaders will make a good system better.
And the massive sanctions that have been placed on them too.
That's right. And what the Democrats have done is they've taken the best of capitalism and combined it with the best of socialism. We have excellent corporations that are doing great things, which are well managed. We have corporations that are doing very bad things because of differences in leadership. And what they've done is that they've also given us Social Security and minimum wage standards and protections of labor union organizers. And by the way, companies that don't want to organize have to treat their workers just about as well as union workers do, or they'll get organized. And corporations have lost so much of their power due to NAFTA and free trade. But and we need a more liberal-oriented Democratic Party than it is. I've been very critical about how Democrats have failed working class Americans in many ways. And much of my writings have been about that. I had an op-ed published in 2010 about how a Democrat can win in a red state. And basically, they got to say we made a big mistake with NAFTA. That was a terrible mistake. And admit that and just say, we're not going to make that mistake again. And the majority of congressional Democrats voted against NAFTA. It was only President Clinton who thought he could get a cooperative Congress if he gave them what they wanted with NAFTA. NAFTA was Republican, not Democrat. And Democrats have to admit they made a horrible mistake when they pursued that Republican legislation and got it ratified in Congress. But that's the message. Leadership is everything. And if you want an example of a bad capitalist country, you can find one. For a bad socialist country, you can find one. And that's the message. Leadership is everything. If you promote the wrong ones in a corporation, you're going to pay for it. If you elect the wrong politicians, you're going to pay for it. So that's the closing message. But thank you very much for having me on your podcast.
Professor,
I consider it a privilege.
Well, we're the ones that are privileged for you being here and for taking the time out of your Sunday evening for being here. And I apologize for keeping you trapped in your chair for so long, but thank you for being here. Okay. And as I tell every single guest who comes across our way, I hope this will not be the last time that we see you. The door is open to you, sir. And I hope this is not a one-shot deal. And, every single guest that comes across our way the door is open to you, sir. I hope this is not the last time we see you.
Great. Thank you very much for the offer.
Thanks so much. So that is Professor. We'll let you go and have a great evening, sir.
Okay, you do the same. Oh, by the way, you're doing an excellent job of explaining things. No. I wish I had your memory for detail because I never had that much detail to begin with.
I'll lose it eventually, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
we say goodnight to the professor. We did get a question in the comments for him, but I think the professor was running out of steam on us, so I want to let him go. And he's not a young man, which he freely and openly admits he's not a young man. So we want to let him get back to his evening, and we can't argue with that. 2 hours is a long time for the professor to sit there in one spot and be with us. I've been working on having the professor with us for, goodness, probably since the late summer. I want to say possibly back into August, I think might be the first time that I spoke to the professor. I want to say it was maybe August. And he's had some genuine, proper health issues. And he was very reticent to come on. And it's only recently, probably in the last few weeks, that he's felt well enough to come on. And it actually took a bit of convincing to get him to come on in the video form. He was just going to call in because he wasn't sure his appearance was up to snuff, and he was worried about doing the video portion of the program. But it was great to have him. I mean, here's a gentleman who's he's been around. He's seen a lot of things. He's 88 years old. He's seen a lot of things in this country. He's seen a country, that was in the best. He's seen the best of this country. A post-war solitary superpower, largest economic power, rebuilt Europe, rebuilt parts of Asia. Free, massive economic power, huge middle class, growing civil rights and economic rights country. Never perfect. Remember, our own Constitution says that we will always, to form a more perfect union, which presupposes the fact that it has never been and may never be a perfect union. So the professor has seen a lot, and that's why we wanted to get him on and to have him discuss these things. And it's important to know where we are now and where we've been. And it's part of what we try to do here every week. It's not just about trying to make the case for Democratic candidates, the Democratic Party, the Democratic way, or to, stand on top of the desk and shout the rooftops for progressivism and so on. Progressivism in and of itself is not new. It's not a new thing. The very first progressive was self-labeled progressive was Teddy Roosevelt. And he was, labeled a Republican at the time. There's been a polar shift between the two parties. The Democratic Party used to be the segregation party, used to be in the South. Remember, Lincoln was a Republican. It's the point that we try to make here every week is that as the parties stand now, as in their current makeup, in their current platforms, one party is barely even a political party at this point. The Republican Party, it could be argued, and I think it could be argued rather convincingly, is not even a political party. It has no governing philosophy. It has no plan. It does not legislate. It does not lead. Its sole purpose is to deconstruct government, to deregulate, and to find new and fascinating ways to redistribute money to the single group of people who need it the least, the largest corporations, the richest among us, by stripping that money from the people who need it the most, by denying the vast majority of us our right to vote. And by the way, the right to vote is mentioned in the Constitution 3 times, in the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, if I'm correct. It's also mentioned in several different pieces of legislation, including the motor voter bill. It is not, it barely, if at all, meets the definition of a political party any longer. It's a business. It's a grift. It's a corporation. It's a cabal. I'm increasingly convinced that folks who run for office under the Republican banner are just trying to find ways to get rich. I wonder, especially the younger ones, I wonder if they even believe what the party stands for, or if they've just decided it's a quick way to get rich. If I do what these large corporations and think tanks and so on tell me to do, they'll hire me when I'm done. I'll get a high six-figure, seven-figure lobbying job. I'll never have to work a day in my life. All I've got to do is, if I can get to Congress and serve 4 years, 6 years, I'll get a big fat lobbying job and I'll never have to work again. Or I'll get some cushy CEO job for a prison industry corporation. I wonder if it's even a political party anymore. And look, folks, the structure, the high party structure, the folks in DC at the DNC are not perfect, all of them either. Remember, it was Senator Joe Lieberman of Connecticut who killed the public option in the original legislation of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, because the health insurance industry gave him a boatload of money. And it's that same health industry that gives just enough Democrats to keep Medicare for all from being a reality. And let me remind you, let's go back to the very beginning of the program. And the professor and I were talking about Trump running in the Republican primary on a progressive platform. I believe the number, and someone is very happy to correct me if I'm wrong. There were it was either 112 or 114 Democratic House of Representatives, House candidates who ran on Medicare for all. And 113 of them won election. And those were not all re-election. Those were new candidates in there. Progressive issues, the progressive platform is a winning platform, period. I have this argument all too damn often on Facebook. At that other side of information, you can go there and see it. I have this fight with the so-called centrists all the time, that progressivism doesn't work. It's not a winning strategy. Progressive candidates don't win. Well, that's crap. They do win. And the issues win. Trump won Florida, but Florida also passed a $15 minimum wage. Recreational marijuana won in North Dakota and in Iowa. Recreational marijuana won in Iowa. Perhaps one of the biggest ways to stimulate an economy and end the for-profit prison industry, recreational marijuana, was legalized everywhere that it was on the ballot. I don't know that it lost anywhere, to the best of my knowledge. Again, get a hold of me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. I want to learn what I don't know. Progressive values. Values is not just a Republican word. Progressive values win. They win. And so do the candidates that stand for them. The congressional candidates, the mealy-mouthed, centrist candidates who ran under the Democratic banner, whom would be considered Republicans if this was still the 60s or 50s or potentially even 70s, all lost. When you try to stand for everything, you actually stand for nothing. There's 330 million people in this country. You can't please them all. You have to stand for something. When you try to stand for everything, you actually stand for nothing. And it's because of those centrists, because they tried to please everybody and ran away from some of the platform positions that got them elected in the first place. I'm thinking specifically, he tried to say, I'm tripping all over my own tongue tonight. I'm thinking specifically of Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. They cost Democrats, brought us down to what might be a, I don't know, three or four vote majority in the House. Because they lost. Because they stood for actually nothing. Because they tried to stand for everything. They tried to kiss everyone on the cheek. You can't. You can't. Even when a voter, it has been my experience, I should probably preface, it has been my experience that when a voter is faced with a choice between a real thing and a fake thing, they will vote for the real thing every time, even if they don't like it, because at least it's real. So that's just where we are with that. So we thank the professor for being here. It is 7:12, coming up on 7:15. We're into our third hour here on the Kennedy Effect. If you are that other side of information on Facebook, we'll see you. Say hello. Andrea is in the room. Lisa is or was here. I'm not sure. My friend Lisa from the National Infrastructure Bank initiative that we spoke about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever, 3 or 2. It's, something like that. So George currently has himself muted. I'm going to ask him to not mute that way anymore. we want to explain to you a little new thing that we have set up. You have probably heard about it before in other context. It is called a Patreon account. I think it's called an account. A Patreon account for the Kennedy Effect. You can become a Patreon subscriber for 5 different monetary values, if I'm not mistaken.
6.
Thank you. 6?
Is,
I thought it was 5.
bronze, silver, gold, platinum.
It is 6.
I believe it's adamantium, and then it's vibranium.
And vibranium. Because we threw a couple Marvel metals in there. Damn right we did. Yes, we did, folks. We threw a couple Marvel metals in there. Let them sue us for copyright. We have nothing, so nothing from nothing is still nothing. So what it is you can become a Patreon subscriber, a Patreon member, as it were. And what comes with that? So why would you possibly subscribe to the Kennedy Effect for a monetary value? Well, you get some goodies. All of those goodies have not entirely been sorted out. But among the ideas that we have kicked about, and I think that we will do, have been several. One I think is completely set. So I might be a bit early in bringing this to you, but I wanted to explain it because it's something that a lot of the big programs will do. A lot of the big, especially the right wingers, will do this a lot because there's just no shortage of way that those folks will suck in money. Alex Jones will sell you orange juice in a bottle and tell you that it's some sort of miracle cure for fill in the blank. It'll tell you it grows hair, yet he's bald. It'll tell you you can lose weight, yet he's fat. It's like the 1920s Carnival Barker or the late 1800s, the guy that used to drive through the West and tell you that it was a miracle cure for everything when actually it's just water or something like that. Right wingers really know how to bring in money. In fact, we could probably talk about that later as we get into the program, that Trump has raised $200 million since the end of the election. I know it's being reported at 170, but that was a few days ago. I'm sure he's continuing to raise money. It's probably got to be around 200 million by now. But the Patreon is a monetary subscription, and it gives you extra goodies that we don't do here on Sundays. Among the things that we are going, so what do you get for that subscription is the better question. We will give to you exclusive content that might be additional videos, additional rants by me, because God knows I don't rant enough. We should rant some more. But we'll also open up this particular Zoom, and you will have a chance to meet with me privately. We'll do private Zooms for you because you might be hesitant or shy to call the program. Wink, wink. Nobody's calling yet again. No need to be shy anymore. Call. We'll open up this Zoom room. We'll give you the keys to the castle, and you can come and chat with me. We will all the way up to me doing personal appearances at, when it's safe. And if I can afford to get to your group, because that could be in California somewhere, all the way up to doing personal appearances for your group. We're also working on having a way that part of your contribution, your subscription fee, will go to a charity of your choice as well. Most likely animal charities, so that we won't make them political if you are unwilling to do that. So the Patreon is set up. It is there. George, where do you find it? Patreon.com what? probably patreon.com/something. Yes.
Yes, I believe it's www.patreon.com/. I
That other side
believe
of
it's
information.
yes, that other side of information.
Holy guess! What a great guess that was. I've actually guessed that. That was pretty sweet. Yes. Okay, so patreon.com. I have no idea how you spell Patreon. Yes, I do. I will find that out. Hang on. I do know how to spell it. If I can find the... So it's www.patreon.com. Patreon is spelled Patreon.
EON.
Patreon.com / that other side of information. You will see the information there. If you become a Patreon subscriber, we will give you additional goodies outside of the program. Could be shout out, could be an advertisement, could be a private Zoom with us, could be me giving a speech to a group, because God knows I don't talk much. Because that would, you would have to buy for me to speak, because God knows I don't talk. But it's there. The Patreon account is there. It is yet another way. And look, we're not going to be stuffing that money in our pockets, and we're not going to be flying to Europe on it or running away to Mexico on it. It will be to grow the program. It'll be used for equipment. I can guarantee you, it's going to be used to grow the program. We're not going to get rich off of it. I can tell you that. So just please take that word as gospel. Take that as truth. We're looking for, ways to redo the studio, make the studio better and more efficient, and better appearances and green screens, and just a lot of the equipment we have. It's just a matter of getting it here and getting it, doing the work of the setup and so on, and getting some additional equipment that we don't have, and getting some software that we don't have, and things like that. So patreon.com / that other side of information.
Excuse me. I tried that. It does not work. But
Oh, cool.
Sorry about that.
Where is it then?
Now, if you go to the Patreon page,
Huh?
go to the search criteria or go to the search line,
Right.
put in that other side of information. You can get to it from there. I'm very sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's gone live yet. We really have to
maybe?
discuss. I'm sorry. We have to really discuss what.
GIFs.
Yeah, gifts and
Goodies.
stuff like that.
The goodies.
Yeah,
The
the goodies.
the goodies. Well, no. Well, I mean, we know we'll do exclusive content. We can do that.
Yeah.
We can do. We said we would do the private Zoom.
Private Zooms.
We said we would do. That I would do public speaking for your group if you wanted to do a Patreon for a group, like a local Democratic committee or a state Democratic committee or something of that ilk. We would do it that way. Or if you have an indivisible group or a local Bernie-crats group or something, an Our Revolution group, something like that, we could do it that way. There's that stuff. We could do it that way. We have some of it. It's just a matter of putting a benefit together for each subscriber level is what we need to do. So what I told you is true. We have to
Flesh it out.
Correct. We have to match it with each subscriber level is what we really need to do. So that's kind of that.
Yeah, that's on me. Sorry about that.
No, I have to do it too. We do these things together. Nothing's on you by yourself. We do these things together. It's you and I in April. We do these things together. Nothing's on you by yourself. I can't cut your pay any further. Before we get you into negative numbers. I can't cut it any further. But let's think about one of the things that the professor was saying. Wait, did I cover all the business part that I wanted to cover? I think I did. We had the Patreon account. Yeah, I do. You know what I do? I want to let me, before I get back into what the professor was covering, let me just say again that the Twitter is open I'm looking at it right at the moment. That other side of information, you can find it that way, I believe. Can you search Twitter that way, George?
I believe so. Let
You
me
search that other side of information. Can you find it that way? It is at that Kennedy Talk.
yes.
You will see us as a relatively new addition to Twitter. We joined in October of this past of the Year from Hell, October. If you're, by the way, if you're a Star Trek Voyager fan, you'll know the Year from Hell. Um, we just joined in October 2020. That other side of information, you can find us on Twitter. If you search for that other side of information, the Twitter handle is at that Kennedy Talk, the ampersand at that Kennedy Talk. We have a whopping 11 followers. I would, more than that would be lovely. If you, let me just put it that way. I'm kind of, reticent to beg people for to be a follower, but it would, more than 11 would be nice if I could just put it that way humbly. So give us a follow if you would, please, on the Twitters. I can't exactly say I am the most active person on Twitter, but I am getting more and more active on Twitter. But it is also an excellent place to get show announcements, tell you who the guests are, when we are going to be live, when we are going live. It is also an excellent way to contact the program. You can tweet at us. Again, you can give me comments, questions, yell at me and disagree. That's cool too. I mean, it's fine. It's okay. You don't. No one is obliged to agree with me on this program. It's perfectly fine if you don't. It's easy. It's easy to do a program like this for large groups of people who already agree with you. And it's probably, to be blunt, why there are not more phone calls, because everybody's already agreeing. But if you don't agree, that's fine. We're Americans. We don't agree on a lot of different things. So you don't have to agree. The point of the program is to, like the tagline says, inform, educate, and engage. I want to educate you, and that's not a bad thing. And it doesn't mean I am uneducated on things. I don't understand mechanics. My poor dad tried to teach me a lot of things about mechanics, and I never got it. I am uneducated about carpentry. I'm uneducated about a lot of different things. I'm uneducated about undersea biology. And, I could probably list 100 different things that I'm uneducated about. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. What this program is here for is to help, not just help, but to establish truth. There are over 1,500, more than that, right-wing hate radio stations all over this country, blasting disinformation and, dare I say, propaganda into the radio airwaves 24/7, to a point now where vast portions of the population have taken it as truth and gospel, even though it is fundamentally against their own self-interest and against their own well-being. If you are a poor person, an economically poor person, and if you are white, black, Hispanic, Asian, purple, polka dotted, from Mars or Venus or Jupiter or the Andromeda galaxy, to continue to vote Republican is quite simply against your own physical, life-generating, life-sustaining self-interest. Period. That's not an opinion. We have moved beyond the point where that is opinion. That is now fact. And it has to stop. And that is what we are here for. Not to try to convince you of that, but to explain that fact to you. And for those of you who agree with that, to help you explain that fact. And to help you back up the fact that progressivism, if you consider yourself, if you are a centrist Democrat or a Democrat from the 90s who thinks progressives are just wacky, we're the base of the party. We are the history of the party. We are the party before you drove it into a tree in the 90s. We're the ones before you made it Republican light in the 90s. Just like progressivism isn't new, Reaganism wasn't new. What do you think the country was doing before the Great Depression, before Black Friday, before the great stock market crash of 1929? It was the same damn thing. Massive tax cuts for rich people. The governing philosophy of Republicans during that time was less government in business and more business in government. And what happened? A massive depression. And for a while, following the depression, up into the 50s, it was referred to as the Republican Great Depression. And Republicans managed to reframe it as the Great Depression. It was taught in schools as the Republican Depression. Well, guess what this depression is going to be? It's going to be the Republican Depression, the second Republican Great Depression. In fact, the title I'd give it would be so damn long, I probably wouldn't remember it enough to repeat it accurately 2 times in a row. It's a Trump, corporate, fascist, Koch, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, failure to act on a pandemic, Reagan, Nixon, 50-year long, planned, staged, inevitable second Great Depression. And the McConnells of the world and his wife, who's worth almost $1 billion, the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Zuckerbergs of the world, they're going to be fine. The rest of us, not so much. And that's by design. And when 72 million people vote for that, or at least vote against the party that can stop it, something's fundamentally wrong. There's a disconnect there that I can't explain, but I will sit here every damn week and try and stop. And as the program grows, I will sit here more nights and try and stop it. In fact, that's an interesting thing that I wanted to mention. Let me reset. It is 7:30 Eastern Time here in the United States. We have about a half hour left of the program before we say goodnight to you until next week. I currently do not have a guest scheduled for next week. I am working on that. I am efforting that. I do have somebody that I need to contact, although I do have several fishing lines in the water to get a guest for next week. And I believe, let me look at a calendar very quickly, if I can get my phone open very quickly. I believe I do have someone that I want to contact for the 13th. The 20th, I think I'm going to try to schedule a year in review and regather the roundtable. And then we will be taking 2 weeks off for the holiday season. The 27th is right in between Christmas and New Year, and then the 3rd is right after New Year. And we will reconvene on January 10th, 7:33 Eastern Time here in the United States. We will take about a half hour left of the program. The phone line is open, 267-227-9189, 267-227-9189. We will try to take you to 8 p.m. You can email the program, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. You can live tweet the program at That Kennedy Talk. The chat room on the home group page is still open. That other side of information. And I apologize too, because I seem to be getting a little stuffed up again. I don't think I'm getting anything. I just think I'm stuffed up for some reason. And I think you can hear it, because I think the voice is getting a little gravelly and we're getting a little stuffed up. I don't think I have anything, but it is, I can hear it coming. And again, I hope you will check out the Patreon. I will put an announcement on Facebook and Twitter when it is all completely set up and all the goodies are in place. We hope that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We hope you had a safe Thanksgiving. We hope that even though it was in all likelihood very, very difficult, and I'm sure it was very difficult, that you stayed safe, that you stayed separate, that you stayed distant. If, by the way, that if it was 1 year that we had to do this out of all the years that we will be alive, then it is just the price that we have to pay. It's not fun. It's not pleasant. It's not the way any of us wants to spend a holiday, but it is the truth of our situation. We have this is the kind of crisis that only a federal centralized government could respond to adequately and control, and ours failed. It failed because it failed for two main reasons. Because it was determined way back in April that predominantly people of color were dying at a 3-to-1, 4-to-1, 5-to-1 ratio. And hey, that's okay. And because the overriding principle of the Republican corporation, it'll cost money to do anything about it. And we can't have that. Whatever you think, every reaction or not reaction or quote unquote policy position, because they don't really do policy positions anymore. Just about everything that happens out of what is now the Republican corporation, you can all trace back to money. Because we can't spend money because rich people might have to pay. Big corporations might have to pay. And we can't have that. The only thing we can spend money on are prisons and war. all comes down to that. We're supposed to be better than that. Remember, society, isn't it scripture that tells us we are only as good as the least among us? So we wrap ourselves in that, but then live by none of it as we move through this holiday season. Ask yourself about that. When right-wing media blares at you and screams at you about this war on Christmas and this war on Christians and this war on religiosity, ask yourselves how much the right wing actually lives up to it. Because they don't. At all. I was on a stream of consciousness before I started talking about Facebook and Patreon and so on, about how progressivism isn't new. And it's not new. Progressivism is not a new party. The progressives are not a new party. They go back. It was Teddy Roosevelt that created the national parks and broke up big monopolies and talked about how rich people cannot control the government and should not hoard money and need to be taxed. It was Teddy Roosevelt. The New Deal under Franklin Roosevelt did not just save the United States from the Great Depression. It saved an entire economy, a world economy. It saved capitalism from itself. It saved capitalism from collapse. It fought a world war and defeated fascism. And now we will have to do it again. Not fight a shooting war, hopefully, but New Deal policies will have to defeat fascism again. Because that's what the right has turned into. There is another F word out there, except we can say this one on the radio. It's called fascism. A merger of corporate and state interests, except it's not by Mussolini's own definition, who created the system in the first place. Except it's really not just a merger. It's corporate interests using government for their interests, which are profit. Profit, profit, profit for a very precious small few, the top 1%. Now I'm sniffling right into the mic, which is probably not attractive to you folks at home, and I apologize. 267-227-9189. thatotherkennedy@gmail.com. At that Kennedy Talk. 7:41 Eastern Time. That other side of information on Facebook. 267-227-9189. And what saved the planet? What saved capitalism from itself? What saved private corporations from their own worst instincts, from their own worst habits? Government. I got into this a bit with the professor before he had to leave us. It was government. It's why rich people hate government. It is the one sole overarching institution that we, the people, have endowed with the power to protect us, we the people, from the rich and the powerful and the corporations. Have you ever asked yourself, if Republicans and conservatives and those who would make who have said publicly that they would want to make government so small, they want to deconstruct government, if they hate government so much that why they want to control it so badly. I mean, those two things don't go together. Has that ever crossed your mind? Has it ever concerned you? Has it ever made you think? That a whole self-identified political movement that hates government and wants to see it torn down and minimized and shrunk and made largely ineffective, if not completely ineffective, and privatized and sold off and handed to private corporations for profit, but yet they want to control it so badly. Why? I've always thought it's because, for exactly that reason, because they know they can make money off of it. How many so-called lawmakers do we see go into office as regular folks like you and I? Well, I am no longer middle class. I was at one point. I'm no longer. But middle class folks, maybe upper middle class folks, but certainly not wealthy and rich. After a few years, though, they are. Isn't that something? And why is that? Why is there always no shortage of folks who are willing to, climb over that proverbial pile of dead bodies to get into government? Because they get wealthy from it. But yet, they don't want it to work either. It is the progressive members who want government to work. There are certain things that only government can do. Only government can produce something like the New Deal. Only government will build the roads because the roads are not profitable. Only government will build the schools because the schools are not profitable. And they're not supposed to be profitable. Only government will build the public libraries, the water systems, the power systems, the airports. And we haven't even looked forward and talked about things like high-speed rail, bullet trains. What does Amtrak's Acela do? 70 something miles an hour? Maybe 90? Chinese are building trains that go 325 miles an hour. They're building maglev trains, magnetic levitation trains. We can't get Amtrak to run. All because Reagan decided we're not going to spend on these things anymore because rich people don't want to be taxed. That's not what Jefferson and Madison had in mind. These progressive taxes, these inheritance taxes, these estate taxes go back to the founding of the country. It is who we are. The rich will pay because expressly due to the fact that they are rich. That's the kind of trickle down that works when the rich pay into the system. The economy was never more healthy than when at the height of unionization, democracy in the workplace, unions, democracy in the workplace, people voting on how their workplace will operate, negotiating with those that own the company. We had the foresight, the progressive foresight, to write constitutions all over a battered and rebuilding Europe, and put into those constitutions that unions will have a seat at the table, that they will be on corporate boards of directors, while we crush them here at home. I will see if I can find it, which makes for tremendous radio. I will see if I can find it. I'm looking at the wrong place. A tweet from Bernie Sanders about the number of healthcare bankruptcies coming from the point of view that everything, we have made literally everything in this country for profit, when in fact just isn't how we should be. And we were never meant to be, but I will see if I can find. This does not make for terribly exciting radio, but let me see if I can find it. It was a Bernie Sanders. Why don't I search it? It is a tweet from Senator Sanders. Oh, goodness. Now I'm not going to be able to find it. It was a very simple thing. It was a list of bankruptcies. Essentially, it was a list of all the other nations on Earth, or at least about 10 or 12 of them, and how many bankruptcies they had due to healthcare costs. And all the other nations were listed at 0. How many healthcare bankruptcies did the UK have? 0. Ireland, 0. Germany, 0. The Scandinavian countries, Sweden, Denmark, 0. Canada, 0. The US, over 14 million. Because we have made everything for profit. It's not, is that who? I don't think that folks realize the true outlier that the United States has become. We're the only nation on earth that does the things that we do. And we think we're the morally superior ones. We think it's normal. It's not normal. We're not in the mainstream. There is no such thing as American exceptionalism. We do not do what's normal. And if you're out there thinking to yourself, well, so what? We're better than these other countries. They're not doing it right. There's almost 200 recognized individual nations on the planet. When we are the only ones doing the things that we do, literally the single only ones, doesn't that tell you that we're doing something incorrect? It's raining. There's 200 people outside. It's raining. Every single other person has an umbrella. We stand there and get wet. No other nation has a student debt problem. No other nation has healthcare bankruptcies. No other nation allows $30 billion a year in health in pharmaceutical advertising. We're not setting standards here. We are the outliers here. Not everything is meant to be for sale and for profit. It just isn't. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to assign you homework. I beg you to do this week. I beg you to do this week. Whether you use DuckDuckGo or Google Anwar. ANWAR. The Arctic National Wildlife. What's the other A? Something Reserve. It's Anwar. The Arctic National Wildlife, or is it the Alaskan National Wildlife Arctic Reserve? That might be right. It's ANWAR. Put it into the search bar of whatever your favorite search engine is. And don't read about it. Just click on images. You don't have to read. Just do images. See the images of the polar bear and the caribou. The vast fields of untouched ice and glaciers. The pristine waters, forests. Indigenous peoples. This is the easiest homework assignment you may ever get. Let's pick whatever search engine you wish. Put in Anwar and do images. You don't have to read a word. And that's the place where this regime, this Trump regime, this Republican corporate machine can't get oil companies, fossil fuel companies in there fast enough. The indigenous peoples that still call it home, who cares? The animals that live there and call it home, who cares? If the drilling kills them all, no problem. Profit, 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 profit. That reserve borders Canada. Canada is fighting the drilling that the United States is going to allow there. Does the United States care? Does this Trump regime care? Does this fascist Republican corporate regime care? No. The UK, Denmark have decided they will end any new explorations for fossil fuels. Existing drilling may continue. New exploration will end. What are we doing? Drill, baby, drill. Whatever dies and gets polluted along the way, who cares? Because everything is for profit. Is that who we are? Is that who we are? Even if you continue to call yourself Republican, is that who we are? Basic fundamental question. Is that who who we are. That is your homework assignment for the next week. Do an internet search, whatever search tool you wish to use, Safari, DuckDuckGo, Google, I don't care what you use. Anwar pictures, have a look at what this regime wants to destroy and can't wait to do it. And the leases that they're selling for drilling are $1, $2, because Exxon, who regularly net profits over $50 billion a year, because $1 or $2, yeah, that's going to break them. George, before we sign off, if you could unmute, please. I very much want to say to you, sir, a very happy birthday to you tomorrow.
Thank you.
You are going to be 29, I believe.
No, I'm going to be 58.
Right, 29. Like I
I'll be
said,
58. That's okay. I could, hey, I don't, no, it's
like
58.
29. And
Yeah.
I want to say this. I want to say this with George on air, unmuted, and with everyone listening before we sign off here at the top of the hour. When this program started, first off, I wouldn't be here without April Riddick. I have said that 1,000 times, and I will say it to my last days, because it is the truth. It was April that helped me get everything started, drove this program, and pushed it, got us to Hot 101, got us started, and everything else. And when I was having a casual and friendly conversation with George about something completely unrelated, probably something very, very geeky and very unrelated, George immediately jumped forward. Why does Siri keep waking up? And something very, very unrelated, and told him that I would be starting this program. He immediately leapt forward and said, I am going to be a part of this, and volunteered himself. And I have probably taken way more advantage of that than I should. And probably way more than I have a right to. And so for every single human being who is listening to this and has been a part of this program from its inception, I would also not be here without George, his friendship, his support, his kindness, his patience, and his wife, Lynn, by the way, because I take a lot of time from George. And I am beyond grateful to him, George, to you. I am beyond grateful. We're not done yet. George and I and April and I, the three of us, we are not done yet. We're not going anywhere. We have work to do. This might be a little more work to April and George than it is to me, because I'm the lucky guy who gets to sit here and do all the talking and talk to the guests, and who gets to, exercise his ego every Sunday. And I hope going forward gets to exercise his ego 5 days a week, 4 hours a night, and take phone calls from you. That's the eventual goal. But it's probably more work for them than it is for me. But we have work to do. We're not going anywhere. And so I just wanted to make sure that I said on the air properly to everyone, and to you directly, sir, thank you so very, very much, with all the sincerity that I can possibly put forth. And a very, very happy birthday to you. And this, we've done all this work remotely because this pandemic has kept us apart. We've had to stay very safe. And I just want to make sure that I say publicly, on the record, on the recording, live on the air, thank you so very, very much. And a very happy, happy day and happy birthday to you tomorrow. I hope Lynn takes it easy on you and you can have a good day. I hope the honeydew list doesn't come back to get you tomorrow.
That's right. Honey does. Yeah. probably the honeydew list will actually start tomorrow. So with the show and everything, we have to be like President-elect Biden. We have to build it back better. We got to do it. So you got to build it back better. That's all.
Well, that was very deftly put.
We got to build it back better. Yeah.
Very deftly put. We have.
Yeah. We have to construct your studio. We got to get that going.
We have to get this room set up so that
get the room set up, and
when this vaccine is out and circulated and so on, that you can be here every time that we're on, and we can actually be in the same room and do a radio program the way it's supposed to be done, not remotely, but actually be here and get the screens set up and get we know what we have envisioned. It's not always easy to explain, but we will we're not done working, folks. We're not done. We want to bring you the most professional, sleek, beautiful, easy to look at, nice sounding, note that you don't hear any difference in this program that you would hear on any program that you turn on in your car, on satellite radio, on terrestrial radio, on anything, any other internet radio, anywhere. We're not. It's not a couple of gamers in mom's basement playing Fortnite. It's we want to bring you the best, absolute top shelf program we can possibly bring you. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're working toward. And we are looking at constant improvements, and we are constantly talking about improvements. We have a lot of improvements in our brains. We just can't be in the same space right now to do a lot of the physical work that we need to do, because we need to stay safe. We need to stay healthy. And, so we're a little stuck from that standpoint, but it was very, very important to me that I wanted to say on the air for all to hear my deep, deep thanks to George for everything he has done. And I know that he's going to continue to do. I lean on him probably too much. And I absolutely want to make sure that I said happy birthday before we say goodnight.
Well, the pay is great. I mean, I have to tell you that.
Listen. And the funny thing is that it grows exponentially.
Yeah.
Because obviously, whenever you double, triple, quadruple, 10 times 0.
There you go.
So I can give you raises at massive multiples. Because no matter how many times you multiply 0. But hey, I'm pretty liberal though with the, no pun intended, I'm pretty liberal with the raises.
Now, you're pretty liberal with the work and the raises. Yeah, that's good.
At least it's even. At least the raises and the work are even.
That's true. The raises and the work are even. Yes.
Fantastic.
That's good. When I say, I want to raise, Jeff says, there's this little lever on the side of your chair.
I say, I will double that.
There's this little lever on the side of your chair. If you get up and hit that, you'll get a raise. There you go.
Exactly. I say, pull the handle on the side of your recliner, and you will get a raise. Folks, we will return next week. We wish you all a wonderful, wonderful week. Please, if you are in the northeast or the northern parts of the country, please stay warm. It seems that winter, I believe, is supposed to settle in pretty much this week. I don't think we're looking at horrid weather, but I do believe it is supposed to be quite cool this week. I actually did not look forward too much on the weather. I'll probably get about 900 ads now that I'm looking at it. Let me see really quick. Yeah, it actually is supposed to be relatively cool this week until we get to next weekend, when it gets back into the 50s, at least here in the Lehigh Valley. I beg you all to please stay safe. Keep warm if you are in the northern states. And also, please keep in mind about this pandemic. It is real. It is real. We are approaching, if not surpassed, I actually did not see statistics for today. We are approaching a 9/11 amount of deaths a day. Look at the response that we had to September 11th. It has shaped nearly everything that we have done in this country for the last 20 years. but yet we lose that same amount of people to this virus nearly every day. And all we seem to do is bitch that we can't go get a beer. My, how we have changed. Think about that. After September 11th, we started 2 wars. Wars we're still fighting. We spend roughly $12 billion a month on those wars, and it was an awful lot more. We've spent nearly $3 trillion on those wars. I actually think it's more than that, but that's pretty much the accepted reported number. I happen to believe it's more money than that. And now we lose the equivalent of a September 11th a day. And all we seem to do is complain that we have to wear a mask. Hell, I didn't even get to the article I posted earlier in the week about martial law. So please think about that. I beg you to stay safe. And I leave you with the same thought that I leave you with every week. Please be kind to one another. There are many, many things in this country that we do not agree on, but I beg you have a discussion and not an argument. We cannot heal this country and we cannot move forward if we are too quick to draw a gun instead of talk to one another. We have to start having discussions instead of immediately dismissing out of hand people just because they may have a D or an R at the back of their name. It has to stop somewhere. We can do these things. We're a smart people. We are not the great nation we think we are, and we haven't been probably for 5 decades. Maybe even further back into the assassination decade of the 60s. But we can be a better, more fair, excuse me, more just, more equal nation. And I know that we can because we have done it before. That is why we talk so much about history on this program. The answers to our problems, our own history. We can do it. We can do it. We can do it because we have done it. We will look for you next week, right here on the Kennedy Effect. That will be 6 and 7 is 13, December 13th, from 5 p.m. Eastern here in the United States. Until then, please take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself and be kind to each other. We will look for you then. Take care. In between times, again, even though we are not live, you can still reach us and reach the program. You can come to the Facebook page, That Other Side of Information. You can email us, thatotherkennedy@gmail.com, and you can get us on Twitter. Search for That Other Side of Information, or at That Kennedy Talk is the handle. The recorded bits of the program will be available on YouTube soon. That Other Side of Information is the YouTube channel. That Other Side of Information on Instagram, and the Patreon account will be up soon. That Other Side of Information. Sound familiar? Sound to see a pattern growing here? Take care of yourselves, folks. We will see you next week. Until then, good night, everyone.